All right, we're going to be working on lesson 8.1, okay, 8.1, and we're going to be working on adding and subtracting polynomials. Now, polynomials is probably not a word you're really familiar with, so we're going to have to kind of take you through some basic vocabulary first, and then we'll kind of discover what polynomials is, and then after I kind of introduce all that, then we'll talk about adding and subtracting them, okay? So hopefully you've already used your textbook to define the following, so we're just going to go ahead and do a brief review, what it kind of really means. And then take you through vocab, and then we'll start the examples. So a monomial, it can be three parts. It can be a number, like, so an example, -14, 3. It even could really be, I probably should have put in there, even like a fraction. So you could say like 1/2 would work, something like that. Anything that is a number, 2.3, that would work, okay? So a number, a variable, or, and I put, notice here that I put, or it could be variables. So like A, C, D, E, X, Y, Z, any kind of variables. It doesn't matter if we're multiplying them or not, just as long as there's at least one, okay? So it could be a number, a variable, or multiples, or the product, okay? So hopefully you remember that product means to multiply of a number and, again, variable or variables, okay? So some examples here would be like, if I take 3 times A, -14xy to the 4th. All of this is multiplication of numbers and letters, and that's pretty much what a monomial is. Okay, and mono just kind of means that there's only one section, and then we're going to talk about what binomial and trinomial mean here in a minute. So then I gave you an example here to circle all monomials, okay? So if we're kind of talking about these guys, first off, 16 would work, so I just circled it because it's a number. 1/2 xy would have worked because you're multiplying xy and the number half together. X minus y will not work, all because of that subtraction. You cannot have subtraction in the problem. Next one, -14x, that works because it's -14 times x. V would work because it's a letter. 3/4 would work because it's a number. Okay, this long guy here, 4x plus 7y plus 6z, will not work because there's a whole lot of addition and subtraction in that. All right, and then we come to what I consider kind of the trickier part here, is these two, okay? When you're looking at these, one of these works and one does not, okay? And so if I kind of zoom in, when I'm looking at this guy right here, it is saying -5, and then it's saying divide by 1r, versus this guy that's saying 1r or, 1r divided by -5. Now, we've talked about in class that this would be the same thing. So if I have -1/5 and r off to the side, that's okay. Having this guy right here, the variable on the bottom, is a big no-no. This is actually saying -5 divided by r. You cannot do that. While this is saying r divided by -5, we can rewrite this part as a number and say it's a number times a variable. So when I'm circling here, this guy would work, but this one is out because you cannot divide by a variable. You might want to make a note of that if you need to. All right, and so then we have what's called a polynomial, and a polynomial is simply just take a monomial, so take one of these, these different guys up here, and now we're going to put addition in them, okay? So when we marked off this x minus y and this 4x plus 7y plus 6z, those are actually called polynomials because there's more than one part. There's many parts. Poly means many. So there's more than one part, okay? So these guys are monomials because there's only one part to them. These guys are going to be called what we call binomial and trinomial. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But poly just means there's many parts to it, more than one, okay? So it says a monomial or the sum of a monomial. Now, we say sum, but realize that subtraction counts because we can rewrite it as addition. Okay, so binomial is a sum of two monomials. So when I'm looking at two monomials, here would be an example. X minus y would be a binomial because there are two parts to it. For a trinomial, when I look at the sum of three monomials, in other words, I have three parts. So this right here would be a trinomial because there are three sections. All right, so now go ahead and we're going to put this table in just to kind of give you a better idea. And we're also going to go ahead and start talking about degrees. I know those are on the next page there as far as definitions go, but we're going to go ahead and start talking about degrees as well. So I drew this picture here. Go ahead and take a second and draw it. And polynomial is like the big overall idea, okay? And then you break into the three categories. You have a monomial, a binomial, which is a two-parter, or a trinomial, which is a three-parter. We just talked about that. Poly, again, just means many. So if I were to have something, kind of zoom in here a little bit. So if I were to have something with lots of parts, like 4x to the fifth minus 4x to the third plus x squared plus 7x minus 18. So when I'm looking at this guy right here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. So since it doesn't fall into a one-parter, a monomial, a two-part, which is a binomial, or a three-part that's a trinomial, this would just be called a polynomial. So if it's not 1, 2, or 3, we just go ahead and put it underneath polynomial. All right, so on a monomial, let's zoom in here. So a monomial's got one part. Now we're going to go ahead and start talking about the degrees here, even though, like I said, the vocabulary is not till the next page, okay? A degree is just the exponent, okay? So if I'm looking at x, I would technically have a 1 there. So my degree on this guy would be equal to 1. It's just looking at your exponent. So now if I look at the next one, 2y to the third, the degree there is just going to be 3. Okay? Now, on this next guy, we have to be careful because we actually have two variables. So here we had an x, here we just had an y, but now we've got two variables. When we have two variables like this, we are going to have to add them up. So we've got 1 on the x, 6 on the y, so your degree would be 7. Now, if there's no variable, then there's no degree. You're just going to put 0. Okay? All right, so now let's go to the next guy here. So here would be an example of a binomial, right? A two-part problem, x plus 2. And again, you're looking at degree or exponents. So I would technically have a 1 here. This number, remember, there's no degree on the number there. So your degree on this guy would be 1. You just pick the biggest. So right here, I have a degree of 3. Here, I have a degree of 1, so the biggest degree is 3, okay? Now, I put this underneath the binomial two-part portion, but if I look here, there's 3 parts. So before you call something, you have to clean it up. If you can put the x squareds together, go ahead and do that. So you're going to go ahead and add them up and get 14x squared minus 4x. So now when you do that, again, you're just picking the biggest degree. I have a degree of 2 here, and on this guy I have a degree of 1. So my degree is 2, picking the biggest. All right, and then we have a trinomial, three-parter, okay? So again, my degree here is 2. My degree here is 1. There is technically no degree there because there's no variable. So what's your biggest number? Your biggest number is a 2, so you have a degree of 2. Again, it's trinomial because it has 1, 2, 3 parts. So then, of course, I gave you one that's not a three-parter, but if I look closely, we can combine like terms. So if I go ahead and put these together, well, in this case, that's actually not going to work so well. So in this case, this actually is going to go to a binomial because what's going to happen there is that these would cancel. So to keep that from happening, let's go ahead and change this over to an 8. All right, and now let's go ahead and put them together. So we're going to get negative 4x squared. Now I'm going to put together my x's, so plus 6x minus x would be 5x. And then I have the plus 7 just hanging out there, so I'm going to do a plus 7. So now again, your degree is simply your exponents. So if I look here, I have a 2, there's a 1 here, and there's nothing there. So my degree here is going to be 2. All right, so now next guy here. Look at each part. Now, again, remember, you got to put your exponents together on something like this. So it still has 3 parts. I can't combine like terms. So the degree here would be 4. The degree on the negative 3, there's no variable, so there's no degree there. And then if I look here, the degree here is going to be 6. Again, just pick your biggest. So your degree is going to equal 6. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and go to the next page here. All right, so on this one, hopefully you finished up, or already looked at this in your textbook. Degree of a monomial is the sum of the exponents of the variable. So as I said, we're just looking at variables. For a degree of any kind of polynomial, binomial, trinomial, whatever, you're taking the biggest or highest degree. Standard form. Now, this is where we're going to start writing things in order, and we're actually going to do that down here in a second in an example. A polynomial that is written with the terms in order from greatest to least, okay? And we're talking the degrees here, and I'll show you what that means here in just a minute. All right, so I want you to go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try example 1 on your own. First off, I want you to tell what degree it is. So tell me your degree. and then tell me if it's a monomial, binomial, trinomial. All right, so go ahead and push pause now, and then push play once you've completed the problems. Okay, so when we're looking here, first off, this is 1A. There's only one part there, so that's going to be a monomial. Okay, so a monomial, and it's going to have a degree of 1. A degree of 1, because there's an exponent of 1 there. Okay, on this guy, you should have combined like terms first and got negative 3y squared plus 2y minus 1. All right, so once you clean that up, that's a trinomial. Okay, just kind of abbreviating here, trinomial. And when I'm looking at my degrees, again, we're looking for the biggest. We've got 2, 1, and there's no degree there. So your degree on this guy is going to be 2. So degree of 2. Okay, on the next one here, you're going to, again, add up your variables. So 4 plus 1 is 5. Here's 1, 1, and 1. So your degree here for this section is 3. So now if I'm looking at that, first off, there's 2 sections, so it's a binomial. I can't combine like terms. And then again, you're picking the biggest for your degree. So my degree here is going to be 5. Okay? All right, now, I threw this in on you just to see if you would catch it. This guy right here will cause this not to be a polynomial. If you remember, x to the negative 4th has to drop. So this is saying 10 over x to the 4th minus 8x squared. Can you have a variable on the bottom? And the answer is no. We talked about that on the last page. You cannot do that. So if you have a situation like that, you're going to write down that it's just not a polynomial. There'll be nothing else to do there. So this is not a polynomial. Okay. All right, and then the last one here I gave you, hopefully it's a number, so you knew it was a monomial. Okay, now the degree, there is no degree on a number, okay, because there's no variables. All right, so now it says, write each polynomial in standard form, and what is the name of the polynomial based on its degree and number of terms, okay? So first off, standard form, this was one of those vocab words we kind of glazed over a little bit earlier. Standard form is basically clean it up and put it in order, okay? So if I look here, I've got 8x minus 3x, and then I have a negative 2x squared and a plus 4x squared. And when we say put it in standard form, what we're saying is just start with your biggest exponents. So negative 2 plus 4 is 2x squared. 8x minus 3x is 5x. So this is in standard form because I went from an exponent of 2 to an exponent of 1. There's a 1 there. So again, standard form just means put it in order. Start with the biggest exponent, work your way down, however long that is. Okay, so now when we name this, we name it based off of the biggest exponent. Okay, so in this case it'd be degree of 2. And we call 2 quadratics. And then when we talk about if it's what kind of polynomial, is it a monomial, binomial, trinomial? And if it doesn't fit any of those, then we're just going to go to polynomial. So if I'm looking here, there are 2 parts. So if you have 2 parts, that's a binomial. Okay, let's try another one here. All right, so again, clean it up. I'm going to start with my biggest exponent first. So I'm going to put my y's to the third together. So negative 2y to the third. I don't have any other squareds, so minus 2y squared. And then I have a y and a 10y. Well, 1 plus 10 is 11y. So that is standard form. I put again, put it in order from the biggest exponent down to the smallest exponent. So 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right, so now we're going to name it. So if I have an exponent of 3, it's called a cubic. And then since I have 3 parts to it, 3 parts, it's going to be a cubic trinomial. Okay. All right, so now next problem here. Now we're actually going to get to the addition subtraction part of things. And the great thing is you kind of already done this year, it's just combine like terms. So all you're going to do is put together, so I've got 5x squared minus 3x squared, so 2x squared. I have got negative 3x and 6x, so plus 3x. And then I've got a positive 4 and a negative 3, and I get negative 1. All right, so now I do expect you to be putting things in standard form, biggest exponent on down. Notice since there's no variable here, a number by itself will always be at the end. Okay, now if I asked you to name this, let's think about it for a second. Squared, or to the second power, means cubic. 1, 2, 3 spots, so you would put cubic trinomial here if I asked you to name it. Or not cubic, quadratic, sorry. Quadratic trinomial. Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you there. All right, so let's go to the next one here. Okay, why don't you go ahead and pause this video and try to see if you can get this one right on your own. Okay, so you should have combined like terms. So we've got y to the fourth, so 1 minus 2 is negative 1, y to the fourth. Then we've got just the 2y to the third. And then I'm going to put together here, so I've got a negative 3y and a plus 2y, so negative 1y. And then I've got the 7 minus 11, so minus 4. All right, so now I put it in standard form, right, because it's in order. Okay. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name this, because we haven't talked about what happens when we have something this big. So if you've got something to the exponent of 4, so far I've told you, and maybe we should write this down off to the side just to help you out a little bit. So when you're naming, right, if you have an exponent of, let's say 1, so let's start with 1, that would be called a linear. If you have 2, that would be called a quadratic. 3 would be cubic. And 4 on up, so anything, it's just going to be like 4th degree, 5th degree, 6th degree. That's how we take care of that, okay? So now if I'm coming over here and kind of looking at this, I'm going to say that this is a 4th degree. Okay, it's not a monomial, it's not a binomial, it's not a trie, because there's 4 parts. So then you're just going to say polynomial. Okay, so your options are monomial, binomial, trinomial, and then if none of those work, just put down polynomial. Okay? All right, let's go down here. Now you're going to see some problems like this. This is kind of like similar to if you want to think about elimination or something like that. You're just going to be going up and down. All right, so just come up with your answers that way. All right, so if I look here, 5 minus 6 is, negative 1. Sorry, guys. Let's try that again. Negative 1. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2j. And 6 plus 3 is 9j squared. Plus 2j minus 1. So now if I asked you to name it, exponent of 2 is a quadratic. And since there are 3 parts, trinomial. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and head over to the third page. All right, so now we're going to look at subtraction. Here's the one thing you've got to remember about subtraction, is that negative sign gets distributed to all 3 parts first. Okay? So it's actually going to become a plus in the middle, and then you're just going to go through and change your signs. So now put together your cubes. So I've got 4x to the third plus, because it became plus, 2x to the third. So I've got 6x to the third. All right, so then I'm going to put together squareds. So minus 4x squared plus 6x, because there's no other x's. And then I have a negative 4 and a positive 2, so negative 2. All right, so when I name it, third power is cubic. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 parts, so we're just calling it a polynomial. Okay, and again, notice I'm putting it in standard form, biggest exponent down to the smallest. All right, why don't you go ahead and pause the video here and try 4b on your own. Okay, so on this one, you should have went ahead and distributed the negative through. So it becomes a plus. All your signs are going to change. So now, y's to the third, well, this is the only y to the third. Now it's a positive, so I've got y to the third. Now 5xy squared doesn't have anything either, so I'm just going to write it down. And then I've got 8y minus 12y, because it changed signs. So I have a minus 4y. And then I have a negative 10 and a negative 7, so negative 17. Again, when I'm naming it cubic because it's to the third power, and there's 4 parts here, so that's just going to be polynomial. Okay. All right, and the next one here. So same thing, you're going to have to distribute that negative through to both parts. So it becomes addition, and just change your signs. So now 9 minus 2 is 7, positive 7. 7 minus 8 is negative 1, x to the 4th. Okay, so now if you were naming this, if I asked you to name it, first off, it is in standard form, okay, because I went from biggest exponent to smallest. This would be 4th degree, right? We don't have anything special for after 3. So 4th degree, there's 2 parts, so it's a binomial. All right, and last one here for the video. A fence around a quadrilateral-shaped pasture is, and then they give you 3a squared plus 15a plus 9 long. 3 sides of the fence, so you can kind of see down here we got the 3 sides of the fence. What is the length of the 4th side? So in other words, if they're telling you that the fence is going to go all the way around, hopefully you understand that that is perimeter. All right, so this guy right here is going to be our perimeter. Oops. Look at this. So there's our perimeter. Okay, they've given you 3 of the sides, and we need to find the 4th. So in perimeter, we just add all the sides. So let's go ahead and add up what we've got so far. So I'm going to go ahead and add up these 3 parts right here. So I'm going to add this guy, and this guy up. So let's see what happens when we add that. So, okay, I've got an a squared. Wrong guy there. Oh my gosh, sorry. A squared, there we go. A squared. A 5a and a 10a is 15a. And then we have a negative 2 and a negative 7, so minus 9. So this is what 3 sides. So when I added up the 3. Now, to get to the 4th side, I'm going to take my perimeter, right, the total that I have. So 3a squared plus 15a plus 9. And I'm going to subtract off my 4 sides. A squared plus 15a minus 9. Okay, so now again, it's a negative, so remember that negative has got to go through to all 3 parts, or make it addition, change your signs, and now combine like terms. So 3a squared minus a squared, so 3 minus 1 is 2a squared. Okay, 15a minus 15a just cancel out, and then 9 plus 9 is 18. So this guy right here would be the 4th side. Ooh, that wasn't a very good arrow, was it? Okay. All right, that concludes the notes for lesson 8-1.